Critics are raising concerns about President-elect Donald Trump potentially starting a trade war with China. Matt O'Brien arguing in a new Washington Post op-ed that while Mr. Trump has backed off some of his campaign promises, he may take a hardline approach on trade. O'Brien writing, quote, he views everything, even a voluntary exchange like trade, as a deal where there's a winner and a loser. In this case, the country that sells more than it buys abroad is the victor, and the other is the vanquished. Trump then thinks that a trade deficit itself, more than, say, an undervalued currency, is proof enough that something must be done, and he doesn't need Congress to help him do it either. So let's bring in Ari Zoldan, the CEO of Quantum Media Group. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here.
All right, so Matt O'Brien says that if Mr. Trump does slap a tariff on Chinese imports, that it will start a trade war with China. He says China is already considering possible ways of retaliating if a tariff like that were imposed. Do you agree?
I think it's very scary. Look, Trump is obviously, he's a provocateur, so I think he's going to go to the line. He's going to upset a lot of people along the way, but whether or not he's going to actually cross that line and create a trade war, I don't think so.
Interesting. Well, O'Brien says, quote, the markets are blissfully unaware and naive. He says that analysts are counting on the notion that Trump's tough line on China was either a campaign ploy or a proposal that has no chance of passing a Republican Congress. Do you agree with that?
Probably a combination of both. I mean, I think Matt does have a very good point. But I think at the end of the day, the question is whether or not, I mean, how many people he's going to upset along the way, how many countries, how many parties he's going to upset. But whether or not he's going to cross that line, I think, is a question. Again, that's still yet to be seen.
Well, O'Brien's point in the article is that he believes that these tariffs would be a very bad idea, and that he doesn't understand why the markets are so positive right now. And he thinks it has to be that financial experts are in denial that he's actually going to go through with this. But isn't it also possible that some of those analysts actually think that this would be a good idea?
I think the jury's really still out on both sides. I mean, I think they're hoping with the Republican Senate, Republican president, obviously the markets are generally going to do well. And I think the markets do like a tough guy up there. So I think overall, I think the analysts are pretty much bullish there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the reasons that people say that he is serious about imposing the tariff is his appointment of Peter Navarro to lead this newly created National Trade Council. O'Brien says that Navarro believes that we should be using tariffs as a negotiating tool to stop other countries from manipulating currency, stealing intellectual property, etc. Navarro is a strong believer in using a tariff that way. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I think it's a good weapon to have, but at the end of the day, whether or not they're actually going to do it, I think is yet to be seen. But it's obviously it's a very, very strong leverage point. But whether or not people are going to cross that line, whether Trump's going to cross that line, I think is yet to be seen. But the question is obviously him being a provocateur, I think in itself is a liability, and I think the markets are really uncertain about it right now.
All right. Another point that O'Brien makes in the article is that, look, 6 years ago a tariff might have been a good idea, but China, O'Brien says, has already done a lot of the things that the tariff might have accomplished. Do you agree with that?
Probably a little bit of yes, a little bit of no, and I think that Trump really should be looking at China as more of a collaborator versus a competitor, and people really aren't talking about that point. I think China, there's a lot of value that China could add to the States has a lot of value that can add to China. I think if the conversation moves from a competitive nature to a collaborative nature, I think we'll really move into a globalization type of economy.
And do you see Mr. Trump collaborating with China?
No. It's a nice thought, and obviously he has very much of a competitive nature, but whether or not that'll actually happen, I think is yet to be seen.
All right, Ari Zoldan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.